Welcome to another exciting episode of Starfleet Boy, where we have a casual and informal discussion about Star Trek, and specifically Star Trek The Next Generation. I'm joined by the original co-host, the Doctor. Hello, Doctor.
Good evening.
How are you today?
I'm good.
Excellent. Well, today we are going to talk about the last episode of season 2 of Star Trek The Next Generation, also known as Shades of Grey, or widely believed to be the most forgettable episode.
Is it?
Star Trek The Next Generation. I don't know. I feel like it is. It's like
Wow.
nothing happens. It's the most nothing. Well, do you want to give the episode summary?
No, I don't.
All right, the episode summary is very simple. The crew of the Enterprise are surveying a new planet. I think it's called Serata 4. And Commander Riker is pricked by a thorn growing on a vine that is able to hunt, I guess. And the result of this prick causes him to fall into a state of paralysis in the beginning, and then eventually it's going to overtake his whole entire neural system, and he'll die. So Dr. Pulaski is racing to save him, and she does all kinds of inhibitive treatments to keep the infection at bay, and she's unsuccessful until she realizes that when Commander Riker is having bad memories, all of a sudden the parasitic disease is thwarted. So she focuses her neurotransmitters to give him only horrible memories, and it ends up saving his life. And we, the audience, are then graced by a series of flashbacks of the entire season 1, basically season 1 and season 2 highlights through Riker's memories and dreams. And that's about it. The episode ends with Riker being saved, and season 2 ends, and as we all know, now we know this, but this is Dr. Pulaski's last episode, so there's a bit of sentiment there, and that's it. Bob's your uncle. Episode's over.
I'm gonna recreate the pricking scene which you keep referring to. So here's the plant, and here's Riker. He's walking along, la 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 la, and then Thank you.
That was very good. What was that, Seymour from Little Shop of Horrors, or what was that?
It looks like it, right?
A little bit. It's
A
not
little
quite the
bit,
right
yeah.
shape, though.
And not the right color, but it does look like Seymour from Little Shop of Horrors. It is. Feared me. It's actually from Marvel Comics. Who knows what it is?
So I said earlier that this is probably one of the most forgettable episodes. It's because, well, in my opinion, I could see why these kinds of things were necessary in the days of in the golden days of television, when you had a whole new audience tuning in and kind of needed to give them kind of a way of knowing what happened before.
Correct. Right.
And I think that Battlestar Galactica was one of the first shows to successfully kind of do away with that when they did these specials, actually. Well, maybe that's the first show that I remember doing it. It might have been done before Battlestar Galactica. It probably was. But I think I prefer that, where you're like watching an actual special that is like, hey, this is what's happened so far in the story. So you watch that for like half an hour, 45 minutes, and then you can just go right into the next season.
Well, Lost, I think Lost did that too. And shows like Alias and Lost did that. They had like little recaps, because I remember Lost, I didn't start watching until season 2, and it was only because of the season 1 it was like an hour-long promo that they ran prior to season 2 on DirecTV. So, oh wait, but that came out after Battlestar, so maybe you're right.
It
Maybe
might,
you're right.
yeah. I mean, I'm not sure. I'm not an expert on TV, obviously,
Right.
but the first time I just, in my personal experience, remember it was Battlestar Galactica. I thought, oh, this is great. Like, we don't have to do those silly flashback episodes, which is what this episode
Well,
is.
I have to. I'm going to surprise everybody, and I'm going to say I have a soft spot for the flashback episodes. I grew up with them. I mean, they all had them. Sitcoms had them. Drama shows had them. And you're absolutely right in pointing out that it was a function of the show to remind audiences after they've run for a while to sort of number one, remind the regular audience how far the characters have come, and also to update newer viewers. Oh, this is the relationships between these people on the show and all that stuff. And of course, it was a very cheap episode, so it's a wonderful cost saver. I mean, let's think about how many sets did we see in this episode. We saw
Sick
probably
bay and a plant
and a random
random planet.
right, which is probably doubles as one of Worf's holodeck, programs.
But it's I think it's counterintuitive to end a season. So this is season 2. From my understanding, was a season in which a lot of kind of horrible things were happening. We had the writer's strike. We had this drama where Gates McFadden was replaced with Diana Muldaur, and no real explanation for it. Just kind of like, oh, she's promoted. And then, if I recall correctly, just again from personal experience and just like vague memories of articles at the time, but the ratings actually slumped in season 2 for the most part, and I am a testament to that because, unfortunately, because of my kind of anger about the replacement of Dr. Crusher, if you can believe it, I didn't even watch it really. I kind of like tuned out a little, and that's unusual for me, being such a Star Trek fanatic. And it's like,
yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, so thank you for remembering that. I forget that you and I have memories longer than the road that stretches on ahead. But so I think that maybe it would have been prudent to go out with a bang, but maybe not. I don't know. I think I remember, and when I was doing a little bit of research about this time recently, I remember someone referring to this episode as a bottle episode, and that's, I think, what you just described. It doesn't really require a lot of budget or anything like that. So yeah,
right,
yeah. So
right.
So you liked this episode. What
it doesn't. Well, I'll say this: the episode. I don't hate the episode because number one, it shows us a lot of great highlights of the show, and they're focused on Riker. I mean, the show actually is an interesting. It's an interesting choice that they picked Riker to be the one to have all these flashbacks, because I would, normally what would happen is that the main character on the show would hit their head, and start have the memory problems or whatever, and on an ensemble show like this, I actually could have imagined an episode where a virus had hit Data and they had to recover his memories somehow.
Which I think that does happen later on, if I'm not mistaken.
Really? I don't remember.
I'm not sure, but I mean,
but something like I would have imagined it would have been Data or Picard, but I was very surprised that it's actually Riker, and I think it's interesting that he is the one who's experiencing this, and and because obviously, you know, everything that we see in the flashbacks are Riker's memories, so they all have to, you know, we don't see scenes where he's not in it.
Right.
So I thought that was interesting that he's the focus of the show, and of course that brings in Troy, who you know, is actually used to good effect because you know, you have a situation where you have the science, which is Pulaski talking about, well, the memory ingrains and this and that and blah blah blah, and then you have Troy feeling, you know, telegraphing what he's feeling. So you have those two characters working in tandem over Riker, and of course they both have a strong relationship to him because Pulaski is that Khan?
Yes, Khan is wreaking havoc through the
Goodness,
through the city here.
it might be Khan and the guy from Star Trek Beyond.
Crawl. No,
Crawl.
Yeah, General. No, whatever his name is, I can't remember.
Whatever.
I will say to your point that up until Riker goes into a coma, I was pretty delighted by the performance. I thought Jonathan Frakes was great, as usual. I liked his kind of charm even in this situation, like and then you know, it was kind of I did get sucked in when Troy comes over and they're talking and they're having like very tender dialogue between each other, and then all of a sudden, you know, he goes into his coma, and from that moment on you have Troy, you know, sensing his emotions, and it does lead Dr. Pulaski successfully to discover that it is the negative or kind of like more intense emotions that will subdue this infection. I thought it was even funny one time where you know, Troy kind of was like, oh, he's having some interesting memories right now, and she's like, well, are they erotic? And it's like, she's like, yeah. It's like, okay. So I mean, I don't know, but I just thought the show, to me, the flashbacks were just like kind of compressing things, and it made me feel like the show was being taken out of context a little bit, just to appeal to try to appeal to new fans, to just say like, hey, check this show out, it's very action packed and it's also very sexy, you know, which Star Trek: The Next Generation is those things, but I think the show should speak for itself. And again, I just felt like it was such a disappointing season finale. It did remind me of recently on Drunk Space Nine, we did a parody of Drunk Space Nine, which is kind of weird, where we pretended we were doing a Voyager show. And the episode that we reviewed was the one where Tuvok is having actually a similar experience, where he's infected by this disease that is causing him to relive sort of a false memory. And Captain Janeway mind melds with him and goes into his deep memories, and then we find Tuvok's
it's the Sulu episode,
the
right?
Sulu episode, exactly, the days on the Excelsior. And I thought that was like so much better. Like, it would have been cool if for some reason Troy had to bond with Riker and journey into one of his previous. It would have been neat to see Riker before the Enterprise, maybe a memory of him serving on another ship or Starfleet Academy, or, you know, something like that. And you could have also interspersed, you know, like a few choice highlights of previous episodes as we're going through that journey. But alas, that did not happen, and instead we get Shades of Grey, which to me was very lackluster and disappointing season finale.
It is a very disappointing season finale. It's just, yeah. I mean, it's a poor choice, and I think it just shows that they literally must have just run out of money.
Yeah.
They just ran out of money, scripts, and everything. It was just like, and it's funny because I know Doctor Who has had season finales where they run out of money, like in the middle.
It's like, no one was minding.
Money.
It's
Sorry.
like no one was minding the budget. That's really funny.
It's like, that's it. You know, they're gonna shut off the lights. Let's just go. Just don't worry about the monster. Don't worry. And this episode reeks
They're
of
gonna
that
shut off the lights.
literally. Yeah.
Wow.
And this show kind of it's yeah, it just seems, I mean, as a season finale, it's got to be the worst of the entire series. It doesn't give you anything really to look forward to. And now it does, you know, it does make you look back. But I think a season finale should work both ways. I think it should, you know, also give you something to look forward to next season. Unless of course you're trying to end things. And no, it's just sort of you know, it's just blah. I mean, again, I don't hate it because I guess
You have a soft
I
spot for.
I understand what they were trying to do, and I think today especially it just seems like a relic of an older way of making television. Like you
Yeah.
said, it's not something that people do, and I don't think it's something shows do anymore, especially in this age where you can just I mean, I can't imagine a show like a show that's streamed on Netflix or Hulu having an episode like this, because people would be like, what did I just pay for? I mean, I can just, you know, go back like, you know, right there in the queue and see these episodes again. I don't need an episode to show them to me again. But of course, in the days when this aired, we did
Right.
not have these episodes readily at hand. We didn't have them on VHS right away.
Yeah, you're absolutely right.
The summer was of course the time where they would do repeats, but they wouldn't repeat the entire season. They would only repeat certain episodes because there just wasn't enough time and they could be preempted. So it served a purpose, and I think within the framework of what it was doing, I think it was effective. But of course it's a one shot. It's you know, to rewatch it is purely an exercise in I don't know. It's something for like what we're doing. It's you know, you only watch it because well, we're watching all of them, but there's no point to it now, other than the performances. And as you pointed out, Riker is a wonderful, or rather, the actor William Frakes is a wonderful ambassador. Jonathan Frakes, sorry. William Riker, Jonathan Frakes.
Right.
Jonathan Frakes as William Riker is an excellent ambassador for the show to any new audience member. I think he's probably one of the best characters to hook you into watching the show. And you know, if you rewatch the pilot, you know, Riker goes and visits Data, which I think that scene is covered in the flashbacks, I believe.
That's right. Yeah, it's interesting that you say that, because here we have a new show coming up, Star Trek Discovery, and they're claiming that the captain will not be the main character of the show. But in a way, Star Trek: The Next Generation had a great way of kind of like decentralizing the lead in a way, and you pointing that out, it reminds me that Riker's a great example of where a secondary character actually for a lot of people is a primary character. And I think the show kind of organically does what Discovery might be doing purposely.
Right. And I mean, it seemed to me, I still believe that the first season Riker was being primed as the main character in many ways. I think what ended up happening is what happens in many shows, is that you discover the strengths as you go along. And of course, Patrick Stewart is just such a phenomenal actor. And,
oh my God, yeah.
You know, he did not leave the show. He, you know, he was up to being, you know, the lead, and people responded to him very well. And of course, Data was a breakout character, and Riker, I think in an earlier time, Riker would have been the breakout character, and I think this episode still has still shows that they were, you know, he's still there. He's still certain people behind the scenes thought Riker's the guy, and in some ways he is, you know, but.
And I think that, but I want to maintain, and and obviously we can explore this as we continue on our journey. But I think Star Trek: The Next Generation is more than the original series. Uh, Balances each character, each of our main characters, and kind of tells their story in a more or less in an even way. We throughout the series we get, like, I think a lot more insight into characters on the Next Generation than we ever did on some of the characters in the original series, where we had to rely on expanded Star Trek expanded universe sources, or novels. I think within the show itself, there's a lot of exploration of some of the secondary characters. More obviously because we had 7 seasons rather than 3, but
Right.
even with the movies, the focus is still very much on Kirk, Spock, and McCoy. And here in Star Trek: The Next Generation, I feel like I really know all the characters really well, and I feel like they just the feeling. I'm not saying that I'm sure if you did a screen time analysis, that Captain Picard and Riker and Data might dominate, but I'm just saying, as a impression wise, feeling wise, to me it feels like a very well balanced portrayal of all these characters.
Yeah, I've always said that. Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
Interesting thing on the Wikipedia about this episode. Yeah, I was looking up something else and I just found this, and I thought this was a funny thing to relay. But the episode was intended to save money at the end of the season by being a bottle episode, which featured few additional characters. The only guest star was Cole Meany as reoccurring character Chief Miles O'Brien. I like that scene where Pulaski has to beam down, and
right.
again, we talked about this on a previous episode of Starfleet Boy for peak performance. The Major, who you haven't met yet, she was on the episode, and she was pointing out how Dr. Pulaski was so different from Dr. Crusher, and I was remembering that you said something about how some of the scripts might have been rehashed from Star Trek Phase 2 or whatever, and so a lot of what Dr. Pulaski says, you might actually attribute to Dr. McCoy if this had been the Star Trek Phase 2. So they probably took some of that material and rehashed it because of the writer's strike. But anyways, the reason was that the show had overspent on the episodes, Elementary, Dear Data, and Q Who, and Paramount Studios was holding the series to their overall season budget. It was the last episode on which Maurice Hurley acted as head writer. He referred to the episode as a piece of shit and terrible, just terrible. He turned in the idea of a cheap clip show to save money and wrote the first draft of the script, with Richard Manning and Hans Beimler conducting rewrites. So our guesses or our impressions of the show were spot on, it looks like.
Let's consult what the companion says.
It says about this, yeah.
And, let's see. Probably it says the exact same thing you just read.
While you look through there, here's another little blurb that says from 2008. From Trek Nation. Shades of Grey is widely reviled as the worst ever Next Gen episode, with good reason. This isn't an episode that makes anyone look good, and I don't just mean Pulaski, Troy, or LaForge. I mean the writers, directors, and producers of the series. Even Marina Sirtis and Diana Muldaur seem to be trying too hard to make the paper-thin storyline work. Over-emoting and making absurd faces. The only person who deserves any kudos is Jonathan Frakes, who somehow manages to keep Riker his charming self.
That's right. Absolutely. The only thing to add is the show was shot in 3 days.
Oh, wow.
My gosh, 3 days. And it was directed by Rob Bowman, who's one of the Trek regulars and probably one of the best directors of Next Generation.
That must have been like a first take, let's go, Ed Wood style.
Right, yeah. And the drug tricordazine, also used in Who Watches the Watchers and in Yesterday's Enterprise, is a likely descendant of cortisone, the drug that fired McCoy with enough hysterical paranoia to change history in the original Trek episode city on the edge of forever.
Wow.
I think that's probably all we can say about this episode.
Yep, I think so too. What so we're gonna move on to our series recap, which will be our second one, not annual, but our second one ever. We did this for the first season. But I guess before we go into that, we obviously have to give this our approval ratings. Now, Doctor, we've recently switched. I don't know if you weren't on the big group episode that we did. Sorry we missed you, but we understand you were traveling, discovering new worlds and new civilizations. So it's all right.
Indeed.
But we've switched from ratings to honor Siskel and Ebert, some of our favorites. We're just gonna do thumbs up and thumbs down.
What?
Yeah, you can still give a rating.
Who the hell came up with this?
I did, and you can you can still give a rating if you want to, but if you could try to distill it into a thumbs up or a thumbs down.
No, there's no nuance. That's crap. Then half the show is a thumbs down for me.
What would you have given? Let's go to classic ratings. What would you have given this episode in a
this is a bad example. I mean, this is not a great episode. This episode is a thumbs down, and it's probably a 2.
Oh, okay. So, but that's fair. It is a thumbs down.
No, because for me, anything under I don't know, most of the stuff's going to be a thumbs down for me.
Well, that's fine. Oh my gosh.
No, there's no nuance.
Fine.
I'm giving numbers. I don't care what you do. You can.
All right. Well, obviously, I'm also giving this episode a thumbs down. And actually, my rating is exactly the same as yours. Riker's charm is the only thing that gave it a 2. So I guess I'm going to have to reevaluate the thumbs up, thumbs down.
Who the hell came up with this?
I came up I came up with it to simplify things. I thought the ratings were a little...
Delusions of grandeur, man. Jeez. Gone for a little while, and Luke develops delusions of grandeur. And...
That's what happens when you're carbon frozen.
God. The hell?
Speaking of which,
rest in peace, Princess Leia.
Princess Leia. Since and on that subject, since this episode's going to air a little sooner than our the recap one will go on the same time. I just want to say that I saw the documentary for Carrie Fisher and her mother Debbie Reynolds, and it's heartbreaking and so good. And if you have HBO, or if you can sign up for that 30-day HBO trial, it's worth it just to watch this documentary. It's called Bright Lights. And while we're on the subject of documentaries, while I was on my carbon freeze or my hiatus traveling, I saw the For the Love of Spock documentary.
Emma and I saw that too.
Oh my gosh, it is delightful.
I was shocked.
Yeah, such a raw documentary. It was really great to see the story of his family life and his son, and just all that family's really been through quite something, and so it was a neat way to see Leonard Nimoy's life, and I think a touching and wonderful tribute from a son to his father.
Yeah, I had no idea that there was those tensions, because of course, I mean, I remember, if I'm not mistaken, Adam Nimoy directed the 2-parter with Spock.
Oh, wow, that's right. You're absolutely right.
So I have that in my, I remember, and he directed other episodes of Star Trek.
That's right.
And he, of course, directed, I remember when he did the episode of The Outer Limits with Leonard Nimoy. So in my mind, I just always assumed that it was the son following in the footsteps of his father as a director, and using the Star Trek hookup. And so I was surprised that that there was tensions at different parts of their lives, especially at the end. you know, and then they eventually, of course, they're reconciled, but that, you know, in the latter part of their lives there was tensions and they didn't speak. And I didn't even know Leonard Nimoy was divorced, and
Oh yeah, all the
the problems with drinking. But you know, I think the documentary just shows that we live in a very different time. You know, we grew up with this guy. I had no idea, and really, in a way, you know, it. You know, I'm glad I didn't know all those things when I was younger. You know,
well, I'm a firm believer in the right to privacy, and I do think that
right.
while celebrity does bring inherent obligations to the public, you're working, you know, in a public centric field. I do believe that there are things that you have rights to keep private, and those are things that go on in your life and in your home. And
Yeah.
unfortunately, you know, today that's a lot harder to do. Obviously, like, you know, based on just what little we knew about Leonard Nimoy, and I'm glad actually that I didn't know. You know, I know that fans, I know that fans want to know. Like, I'm never gonna like turn away a nugget, you know, if it's presented to me. But most of the time, at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter, because we're all flawed. You know, humans are all flawed, and there shouldn't be an unreasonable expectation on a celebrity, other than, you know, what they do in public. Like, you don't want to, you know, Leonard Nimoy wasn't stealing Lamborghinis and getting high and drunk and driving around in Miami and then getting arrested, you know. But
Right.
I don't know who that was a reference to, but
neither do I.
But
that's how hip we are.
But anyways, it was a really touching tribute, I thought, because it was so honest. And I did like Adam Nimoy's revelations about his own kind of rough times. And you know, he's someone that I think is worth following and watching. And you know, I hope he stays in the Star Trek fold and interested in Star Trek. And you know, obviously, we'll see. You know, with the new series coming out, maybe he'll have opportunities to direct episodes of that, and that would be really awesome, I think, for him and for us, for fans as well.
Yeah, I concur.
There's a list of things that he's worked on with NYPD Blue, The Practice, Ally McBeal, Gilmore Girls, which Goldie Scott loves. He watches the Gilmore Girls.
Oh, I have to tell Emma. I didn't know that.
Yeah, and then Star Trek: The Next Generation, obviously, Babylon 5, and The Outer Limits. Wasn't Walter Koenig on Babylon 5 also, right?
Yes, and I think he may even say he's had a better experience on Babylon 5 than on Star Trek.
Wow. That's terrible.
Well, he has a more well-rounded character for sure.
That's true.
He plays an amazing character, Bester.
Bester.
Okay. Yeah, he plays a great character, or he played a great character on.
Well, I've never seen in earnest.
I know
Babylon 5, so
I'm aware of that.
So I'll have to check it out.
I'm certainly aware of that. and to be honest, and I'm gonna get on my little platform for a minute here.
Wow.
You know, B5 is fast approaching just being forgotten as a show. The show does not exist on any streaming service. It is out of print on DVD and has never been released on Blu-ray, and will never be released on Blu-ray, really, because it suffers from the same issues that a lot of the that of course Next Generation suffered from, which is the problem of those video effects. You know, B5 was, if you remaster Babylon 5 into Blu-ray with the effects that it has, it's not going to look great. Let's just
Right.
face it. So it'll never have a grand Blu-ray set. It's sort of stuck in DVD format, and Warner Brothers is just sort of letting it languish, and it's not catching new viewers, it's not catching a new audience, because nobody's repeating it anywhere on television. So it's I feel a particular sadness for it, because I think if something doesn't happen soon, people will forget that show.
Wow, that's really sad. As you know, I was obviously very competitive, and so I was not watching Babylon 5 because I only had time for a couple of shows, and I was giving my time to DS9 at the time. So much time in that sentence. But but it does make me sad, because Babylon 5 did have a huge following at the time. I remember there were a lot of people who were talking about Babylon 5, and so it is sad to see a show kind of
It
disappear.
won many awards that Star Trek never did.
Do you have it on DVD?
My brother does.
The whole series?
The whole series.
Oh, well, treasure that, because it
Yeah.
sounds like it's on the it's an endangered species list.
It is. One day we'll do a show. We'll watch every B5 episode from beginning to end.
I'm happy to go on that journey. We're gonna have to figure out a way for me to watch it, though.
Right. Hopefully it'll be available somewhere by then.
Well, Doctor, I'm gonna go ahead and end our program for today, and then I'll meet you in a few minutes to do our season 2 recap episode. Yay! All right, thank you for your discussion today. Live long and prosper, and see you next time.
All right.